Hello, it is Lord Slar here, returning to the Versus series here on my channel, where I compare two Doctor Who stories that are similar or connected in some way, and by judging them on a variety of factors determine which one is the superior episode, at least in my personal opinion. People are welcome to disagree naturally. Today the stories in question are not only linked by the fact that they are the start of brand new eras for Doctor Who which are much different than what came before it, but they also have the same enemy and are said to be extremely similar by some, as they both have a new Doctor and a new companion stopping an Auton invasion by the Nestines. But which one is better? Well, there's only one way to find out. The first category is plot. The focus of Spearhead from Space is very much on the planned Nestine invasion, but does take a lot of time at the beginning to establish the new Doctor and the new companion. As such, it starts off at a very slow pace, which picks up as it goes along, but this is not only a justified pace, but also one which helps keep the viewer engaged, as all along the way the story builds up mystery and suspense by slowly revealing what is happening at the autoplastics factory. This makes the payoff in episode 4, when things reach a climax, a huge payoff, as it's very exciting to watch, and I definitely expect nothing less from a Robert Holmes script, as it's very well written. However, less patient viewers may not find it as enjoyable because of the slow pace at the start. Rose is at an immediate disadvantage to Spearhead, as it is only 45 minutes long in total, which means it doesn't have as much time to play with, despite wanting to do the same amount of things as Spearhead, those being establishing a new Doctor, companion and era from the show, as well as telling a story about a Nestine invasion. As such, it focuses much more on the former elements than the latter one. It does work in some ways, at least to a fresh viewer of the show, as it does build up a lot of mystery about who this mysterious Doctor figure is. However, it doesn't have much of an opportunity to fully develop the other side of the plot involving the Nestines, resulting in the story feeling a bit half-baked, and the Nestines merely feeling tacked on for the sake of fan services, which serves to really diminish the quality I can attribute to the plot. The clear winner of this category is Spearhead. Rose, like many New Who episodes, simply doesn't have the time to do everything it wants to do in a developed way, making it feel half-baked. The next category is the TARDIS team. Spearhead is the introductory story of both a new Doctor and a new companion. The third Doctor is portrayed here like he is in all of Season 7, a fairly complex Doctor. Despite his charm and strong morality, he's not exactly the most trustworthy type, as he's desperate to leave Earth from his exile at any cost, but still manages to be likeable, as the audience is made to sympathise with him and why a situation on Earth must feel so crippling to him despite it being normal to us. He's also the master of manipulation, managing to get his enemies to accidentally reveal things or think a certain way about how close he is to the truth about them, which is always very fun to watch, as you can see just how clever the Doctor has been at the end. Liz Shaw is introduced here also, and is a very likeable character, mainly due to her razor-sharp wit, which does make the Brigadier look very silly at points. Her and John Pertwee share some excellent on-screen chemistry, and due to the nature of the story, you do get to know the character very well by the end of it. The Brigadier is the only returning element in the whole story, and it's enjoyable to watch as he always is, as well as serving as a good conduit for viewers of the show in the 60s to help the transition to a very different new Doctor Who. Even though he's enjoyable to watch here, the Brig has done much better in other stories during this season, which show him as a much more complex character, whereas he's fairly straightforward here. Rose introduces both a new Doctor and companion too, but in a very different way, as most of the episode is spent with Rose discovering who the Doctor is. Despite this, Eccleston's Doctor has much more presence in the episode despite appearing less, and is really made likeable by his quips and determination in the face of the Nestines. Rose just isn't that enjoyable to watch. Sure, we get to know her background and her character, but she just isn't a very interesting person. I think this is an example of making a character far too normal, and the episode does suffer a little bit because of this. Despite Eccleston being a highly enjoyable Doctor, he lacks the depth Pertwee had in Season 7, at least in this particular episode. You could make an argument for him getting more depth later on in Series 1. Liz and the Brig run rings around Rose any day of the week. With that said, Spearhead wins the category by far. The next category is characters. There's a fair few characters in Spearhead, but none of them are really anything spectacular. Ransom's struggle against the control of the Nestines makes him fairly sympathetic, but you're likely to forget him after viewing. All of the other minor characters just seem to be there to do things to move the plot along, but just aren't very interesting, which is odd considering the abundance of great supporting cast in the rest of Season 7 and Robert Holmes usually creating a lot of memorable characters. In Rose, there are very few minor characters. One memorable one, however, is Clive, who helps Rose discover things about the Doctor. Despite this, we really don't learn much about him, which is a shame as he just feels like he's there to push along the plot rather than be an interesting character. The only other person of note is Mickey, who despite being a likeable character in future episodes, is just nothing here unfortunately. To conclude, neither story wins this category, as both are equally lackluster at creating interesting minor characters, which is a shame. The next category is villains. The villains in both stories are the Nestines. In Spearhead, this consists of Channing, the Nestine consciousness, the Autons, and the facsimiles. Hugh Burton, who plays Channing, puts in a rather unsettling performance. He never quite looks or acts human, which makes him very mysterious and creepy throughout the first few episodes. But if there's one thing creepier than Channing's, it's the Autons. They all have incredibly unsettling crooked smiles and walk around in a very eerie way. As for the Nestine consciousness, some may laugh at the hairy tentacles in episode 4, but I think it works because of the fact that it actually attacks the Doctor, and Pertwee puts in a good performance when it is attacking him, making it seem like a real threat to the audience, as it almost does choke him to death. Plus, they also make a plastic facsimile of General Scobie, which is honestly very scary. I get the chills every time I see him in that amazing episode 3 cliffhanger. As for Rose, I feel the creepy and threatening nature of the Nestines is diminished quite a bit. For a start, they opted to make the Autons more realistic mannequins, which don't look nearly as creepy and move in a very hilarious way, which I do not believe was the intended effect. In Spearhead, to show the invasion of the Autons to the audience, we get to see a sequence of shop window dummies coming to life and slaughtering people on the street, with the Autons persistently marching over the corpses of people they've just killed. In Rose, however, we don't see a single death on the screen, which really makes the Auton invasion sequence really awkward to watch, as they just film dummies fidgeting around in a shopping mall and on the streets, which further diminishes their credibility as a threat, as well as making the production team just look spineless as they won't even show a death on screen. The Nestine consciousness had a makeover too, but it really doesn't make that much of a difference. As for the facsimiles, one is made of Mickey, and it's far less creepy than the ones in Spearhead. In fact, it's played for a really weird, dumb joke that isn't very funny. Overall, Spearhead by far has the stronger villains, as they're actually a credible threat, as well as being really creepy for the reasons I described. The next category is direction. Derek Martinus takes the director's chair for Spearhead and does a remarkable job considering they had no studio to work with and it's all filmed on location. Two scenes which are done particularly well are the sequences where the Autons come to life in London and when General Scobie meets his facsimile at the end of episode 3. It's nothing standout mind, but given the circumstances we should applaud how he managed to make the story look pretty decent and even get some great shots in considering he didn't have a studio. Keith Boak directs for Rose and does a serviceable job. He shoots some stuff well, particularly at the beginning in the department store. However, what really brings him down is the big problems brought on by how unthreatening the Autons are. I don't know if it was his idea or not to have the Autons not kill anybody on screen, but the fact remains the Auton invasion sequence is just really awkward and does a very poor job of establishing the Auton invasion as a large threat. Overall, Spearhead wins purely on how creepy and threatening Martinus makes the Autons feel. The rest of the direction is on the same level really for both. The next category is fun factor. One thing that often turns bad stories into good ones is how enjoyable they are to watch, at least in Doctor Who, hence why I always take this into account. Not that either of these stories are bad though. For Spearhead, the first 3 episodes are definitely great in terms of setup and mystery, but if you're looking for something just fun, you certainly wouldn't find it there. However, the payoff for all that setup in episode 4 is immensely fun to watch, and when everything finally comes to a climax, it makes the build-up more than worth your while. Rose definitely has a lot of fun moments, even funny moments, and while yes, some of the jokes fall really flat, some of them are quite good too, and the episode does move at a much faster pace. However, as a result, the climax isn't anywhere near as satisfying, at least in my opinion, so I ended up having much less fun while watching that story than Spearhead, which means Spearhead wins the category. In conclusion, Spearhead outdoes Rose on almost every level, bar characters where they both fall a bit flat. Most of this is down to the fact that Rose tries to do the same amount of things as Spearhead but with half the time, and really suffers as a result. However, things would have been improved much more for Rose had the production team done a much better job of bringing the Autons to life. Neither is a bad episode, however, but Spearhead is by quite a margin the better story. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all back next time in another video.